Our project is called Blockchain Billiards. And so Blockchain Billiards is both a physical league and an online game. There are two components of this, right? Because we have a democratization component and then we also have a rewards component. So our democratization component, our mission is to democratize the world of cue sports through DAO. We know DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization, smart contract technology, while making blockchain technology and its components concepts accessible and straightforward to those who are new to it. So people who are like, what the heck is blockchain? This is for them. We're also fusing blockchain with real world and digital experiences in a really unique and innovative way. We hope our platform is going to serve as a pilot, maybe like a proof of concept for broader adoption and exploration of decentralized systems. So that's generally Blockchain Billiards. I'm the co-founder, president, and CEO.
You're going through the gamification of an economic system that provides a fruitful engine where it takes in value and outputs value. When you're talking about lattice, you're talking about the principles of gamification, or you're talking about the actual graphing of economics from a value standpoint for the
I'm
creation.
looking at more the long-term sustainability of a currency and of an in-game economy. Because for Web3 gaming, and we are creating an online game, it's really important. It's crucial that people have the ability to off ramp their earnings. And we want to be able to reward people. We want them to off ramp. We want to have a robust reserve and enough of a supply where we can do this and where we keep the cost down for participating in the game and people can off ramp and we can give airdrops and all these other great things. So it requires creating a bonding curve and everything else.
That's interesting. How do you look at protecting a value point when you're allowing external to come into your environment? Like, what methods are utilized to mitigate risk? How economics can make your project better, and how you can look at these external threats as potential ways to actually enhance maybe your project?
I would say, Brandy, wouldn't necessarily be the economics per se, but that would, mitigate risk here. I think it's the blockchain technology itself that mitigates risk. And that's precisely why we are going the blockchain route, right? It's why we're creating a DAO and going the smart contract route and why we're building our game on the blockchain. It is precisely because blockchain helps to mitigate risk against these bad actors, right? We know that it enhances accountability and transparency. We know that it's immutable. It's on a distributed ledger. Data is recorded for everyone to see. Everyone can audit this. It can't be altered without leaving a trace. We know that all changes are transparent. We know that in order to make a change, you have the consensus. So anyone with access has the ability to verify and audit. It makes being a bad actor difficult. It makes their life really tough. So to manipulate records on the blockchain is really difficult. And so I think just from a broader standpoint, when people are new to this and they want to explore it, try to look into exactly what blockchain technology does, because there is that immutable component, there's the accountability, there's the transparency, and then there's the decentralized component, which I really love. That's what really drives me. That's what drives everything behind what I'm doing.
So you have the economics, and then you have the decentralization, spreading it out. You're more attracted to the decentralization side of things.
From a governance perspective, okay? Maybe not necessarily from the rewards, and maybe from the rewards perspective too, but what attracts me is because I have two different careers, right? And I'm building out these rewards programs, cool. But before I did my PhD, I had a whole other life where I was more of like a political economist and sociologist. And I worked with or consulted with or did field work for a number of different international organizations, governments, NGOs, Department of State, the United Nations Development Program. I was a Fulbright Hays Fellow. I've worked internationally across the globe, state society relations, democratization, governance. But I think the thing that really introduced me to the concept of democratization the most was my current role, my day job as a labor negotiator. So I'm assigned a number of different agencies for the largest public sector union in the US. It's called AFSCME. And actually, we're an affiliate out of Washington State, and we're the largest Washington State public union. And I have a turf of a number of different agencies where I'm their lead labor negotiator. And I've seen through the union model. Actually, I was inspired when I was writing the bylaws for our DAO LLC for our league. I was inspired by the AFSCME Constitution because the unions, I would say, is the model that's closest in terms of like maybe a decentralized model where you have members whose voices are being heard and that they actually have that ability to negotiate with management and have their voices heard and it's not silenced. So having that experience in the labor movement is really what drove me for looking at decentralized models as being maybe a solution to a lot of the challenges we see today in government and in bad leadership and management.
Well said. It certainly supports my main driver, which is prosperity,
Yeah.
reaching prosperity. I think we finally have an opportunity that we all can be prosperous in today's time. Prosperity is far more than just money. It's about opportunity and the ability to participate. And I think that's what you're alluding to, right? Is just the ability to have some fairness in the system, to
Yeah.
try to filter out these bad actors. In
Mhm.
today's time, folks are looking at cybersecurity, looking at Web3. They're seeing what's going on with blockchain, even with like Bitcoin and the altcoins. Like they're looking at it as a high risk scenario, and they should, because it strikes very similar to me of the time period with just traditional banking. When you look at horses and carriages, Wells Fargo got popular with having that horse and carriage ride from county to county to facilitate transactions in the store of wealth.
Mhm.
And so what happened when we advanced these stagecoaches and add in protections to store that value as it transferred? Well, bank robbers, bad actors got in and they started manipulating the system, hijacking the route in between, trying everything they can to break the system. It
Yeah.
didn't work. Look what we
Yeah.
have today. Well, Star Fargo is resilient. You're not getting away with stopping them in the middle, right? They're well protected. We've
Yeah.
learned a lot through the ebbs and flows of innovation cycles, and that's just one of them. And so when people are talking about, oh, Web3, fraudsters, so forth, you're paying attention to all the junk out there, all the bad actors, they are literally being filtered. When I look on Coin Market Cap, I see all these coins, these
Yeah.
projects, and I already know that I mean, how could there be any more than 5% of showing real value from a
Yeah.
utility standpoint? So we have so much saturation out there. I think the filtering is happening with the work that you, myself, we're
Mhm.
doing, where we're focusing on real value, real economics, and
Yeah.
ways to help support maturing a system that has largely failed us. It was broken. It didn't have fair access.
Yeah.
Uh, it didn't have the ability for participating in a decentralized way that's outside of main networks like urban hubs. Like folks in our rural areas, they had a hard time tapping in
Right.
historically because they were in the right location. And so
Right.
decentralization, well, that's my number one reason why I love decentralization.
Yeah.
It truly does allow democratization, especially when it comes to education, which is my number one thing that I love the most
Yeah.
about our connected world.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think our society currently is structured in a very centralized manner. And so what this means is that it's a central authority or a core. You've got big businesses or big bosses, you have a board of directors, you have politicians, and essentially it's making access to the decision-making process more restrictive. And you have to put all of your hope and faith in your representatives, whether it's your leader at work or whether it's your politician. And by the way, whenever you mention the two words management or politician, it doesn't invoke warm and fuzzy feelings because there is a reason, right? Who was it? It was like Marcus Aurelius or whoever, whatever philosopher said that you just have to hope and pray that your elected leader turns out to be good. And that's how it is. It's like crossing my fingers that they're not terrible, crossing their fingers that they're going to actually represent what we want and our voices are going to be heard. But we know that often it does not happen. And the question is now, why have someone else speak for you when we should allow ourselves to be able to have a voice and be able to speak and to be part of that decision making process? So when you have a decentralized model, power is distributed not in these centralized structures, but across various channels or in nodes, right? And you're allowing access to decision making and the resources through multiple, more direct pathways. And obviously, that enhances broader participation and engagement. And that's just one main component that I love so much about it.
Well, just with that statement that you made there about the passion about decentralization, our elected leaders
Mhm.
potentially making mistakes, having this new trust in a trustless way, that trust that's being decentralized, the intermediaries removed from the system so we can start trusting it a little bit more.
Right.
I could see how you're inspired, especially now I know a little bit more about your background where you're
Yeah.
working, supporting fairness in a system. Your goal was literally trying to remove the pain points to bring conversation to the table to solve problems so people can just focus on their work. And here you're taking that experience from a local standpoint and then putting it to a macro, wide economics, global economics. We have a lot of challenges, right, in this globally connected world. How do you think we're doing in regards to those challenges? Are we, in Hawaii, we recently removed the regulations, deregulated, so we no longer need that money transmitter law, so we can do those experiments and work with like things like in-game mechanics.
Yeah,
You know, are they doing enough from your
right.
perspective?
In Hawaii, how are we doing? I think that you need to learn to walk, and we're basically at the crawl stage. And I'll explain kind of my thoughts behind that because let me talk about Blockchain Billiards, the league. It's going to be governed by a DAO. And so the DAO is essentially a governance framework that's programmed into a smart contract, right? And for people who are like, what's a smart contract? I tirelessly spent I don't know how many hours putting together our operating agreement slash bylaws. And these are the rules that are going to govern how our league is run. And then the way that I structured it is that we don't have any management committee. There is no board of directors. It is entirely run by the members for the members. And the members come in, and if there are committees that act in lieu of management, then they are member run committees, and members select the delegates for their committees. And they have term dates and expiration, and people can in the DAO make proposals and vote on changes, and cue sports and billiards and pool. There are so many different variations and formats that it allows for a lot of different options for people to make game rule changes, handicap changes, scorekeeping, tournament formats, things like that. So in order for us to do this, I had to create the bylaws. And then the bylaws are basically programmed. They're coded into a set of instructions that the computer can follow manually or automatically. So all of a sudden, the computer is automatically executing on our bylaws and our rules and regulations. In order for me to do this and have this league, I needed to be able to register it as a DAO LLC. That means that, and by the way, it's not just a DAO LLC, it's a nonprofit as well. It's operating similar to the 501(c)(7). But how would I do that if the laws and legislation in the state of Wyoming did not exist? But it does, fortunately. Wyoming is sprinting. If we're crawling, the state of Wyoming in this respect is sprinting. You have the ability to form an entity or organization in Wyoming where it is a DAO LLC, which is what we have. And so that essentially means that our organization is run by a smart contract, and the management is being run by people who are part of that organization entirely by the members and participants. That's really unique, and it's novel, and this is all very new, but they are adapting the technology. And this is why I think it's really beneficial for people like myself and lawyers, like social scientists, lawyers, policymakers to also really get familiarized with blockchain technology. It's not just for the technocrats, it's for people like us because we need to lay that regulatory foundation. Because otherwise, a DAO and a smart contract is just code. We need to create the regulations and framework to bring it to life in the best possible way. And so we need these regulations, and we need policymakers to understand the benefits of why you would want to have organizations that are run this way, why we need blockchain technology. They need to see the potential. And I don't think our officials in Hawaii necessarily see that. And so there is a lot of opportunity, right? I think in your space, especially with education and podcasts and different demonstrations, maybe with the blockchain summit that we have coming up. I don't know if any elected officials or policymakers are going to be attending. It would be great if they did. But even with our project, it would be, I think, one of the largest motivating factors for me is that I share that my union background was really inspirational for me in terms of creating this because it gave me an example of kind of something that works. Another example that's really, I think I keep bringing it up because it's really powerful, is that you have the crowdsourcing example at the University of Washington. For 15 years, they had these HIV/AIDS researchers that were looking for a key protein. And for 15 years, they didn't find anything. And then David Baker opened it up at UW, and he was like opening up to his community of thinkers, and they solved as like a puzzle, and they solved the puzzle and found that key protein in 10 days. And so it's seeing the power of the collective and the union. By the way, weekends, right? The 8-hour workday, vacations, child labor laws, they all come from people coming together and taking collective action. All of this stuff, all of this progress happens when people come together collectively and have a voice. And the whole leadership model, whether it's a politician, and I know it's a representational democracy, but I think it's failing. And I think there needs to be a new model. I'm really hoping that not if, but when this becomes successful, maybe we can be inspiration for someone else. So maybe a policymaker can say, look at blockchain billiards, right? Let's try that. Let's try this in our municipality, or let's implement this in our department. And that's what I'm crossing my fingers for. Like, you can see a real world case study, like this proof of concept, come to life and take fruition. And that's what I'm hoping for.
Well, you're getting it. I'm gonna tell you right now, it's already happening. This is not a fake false dream. This is real. This is
Yeah.
true. This is life. Because when you're talking about DAO, something that fascinates me is, well, first of all, not everybody understands DAO. So if you're watching it's like, what the heck is a DAO? It's a decentralized autonomous organization. That means the organization can run it on itself. It doesn't
Yes.
require a CEO at the helm to make decisions. Collectively, all the users of the system that have voter rights, go ahead and go on there and elect in
Yeah.
new bylaws or whatnot to facilitate protocol enhancements or so forth. So it's just a new way to look at democratization in an election system
Yeah.
to elevate the users of the system. A lot like what, and something that fascinates me about DAOs is when we look at things like our election systems right
Hmm.
here in the United States of America, I can't help but think, wow, what if we had blockchain and we have facilitation and everybody can vote at home with
Yeah.
confidence that there's only one identity, that they
Yeah.
only can vote one time. Like,
Yeah.
why aren't we doing this now? The United States Postal Service has a patent on this.
Yeah.
I have it like pinned up on my Twitter. I can't believe that we don't have this. Or they're just iterating. They're showing us how product development should be like. The end users shouldn't worry about this. They just want to vote, which I hope that's exactly what they're doing. But you can look at the United States Postal Service. They're basically saying DAOs are amazing. We agree. We filed the patent
Yeah.
to help revision the United States election system for voting.
Mhm.
That's how big it is. When we
Yeah.
think about what Web3 is, it's not about what we're just doing now. It's about the inflection point of the things that we are bringing value to now as innovation and
Yeah.
how it's literally shaping and weaving the fabric of our lives for the future.
Right.
And you mentioned finding those proteins took 15 years. So this
Yeah.
stuff doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
And what I love more is the tenaciousness that it takes to step out and do something different. And that's
Hmm.
what you did. And I just love that about you, Linda, is that at first I was like, blockchain builder, what is this? And kind of like an onion, you're like, what? Oh, oh, she's looking at gamification. She's looking to take care of the end user. She's focusing on the engagement of users and a fairness on a system. Can you share, like, for those that are wondering, maybe they're bored in their career, maybe they're looking for a change, like, why should they look at blockchain as a viable option for
Mhm.
potentially going into as a career or looking to do something different?
Like I said before, you don't need to be in the technical field to enter the blockchain space. If you're somebody who is frustrated with the existing model, maybe a little disappointed, right? A little disenfranchised, this is a great space. It's not just a frustration. I actually see it as a solution. But I think that in order for us to get to the point where it becomes systemic, it has to happen at a micro level. So you need to have these smaller case studies, like you need the blockchain billiards, right? And then you need to have a municipality. You need it to happen in a one department rather than an entire company, right? It needs to happen at the sort of lower level. And you need to see these successes. And then all of a sudden you're building this building block and the inspiration for people to start adapting at the broader level. So step by step, we'll get there, right? And it's really exciting because I have no doubt we will if people really leverage this technology. But I think for anyone, I will say that something about leadership, and I see this all the time because I was working in the corporate world, is that leadership development is a billion-dollar industry, multi-billion-dollar industry. And something that always is maybe it's my labor background as a negotiator is that oftentimes when you think of a leader, you think of a singular person or a hierarchy, right? It's like, I'm going to be a servant leader, but you're still singling yourself out as being someone who is representing people or at a higher level. And I get that we've had an entire system and history built upon this concept, but we don't have to continue that. We could break away and do things a little bit differently. And we know that when you have people come together, not just with the UW situation with unions, even in Toyota, they implemented Kaizen, which is a whole new methodology for incorporating decision making in the process. And it's what made Toyota a major manufacturer. I mean, they were nothing before they introduced Kaizen. So we know that this works, right? It's just about how you break down this existing structure and step by step, you need to create these case studies and these pilots and these different opportunities for people to leverage and start becoming more familiar with this technology. But when it happens, I would like to see the replacement of leaders and now going back to everybody has a say. There could be people who help to lead projects, just like David Baker helped to lead that project. There could be leads. It's almost like you're part of a team and you have a team captain. The team captain is a member of the team. You're all equals. And so it's more moving away from that individual to a collective. And I think that's, if anyone is interested in that kind of philosophy, blockchain is for you. Yeah, for sure. If you are concerned about corruption, you're concerned about a lot of issues that we're facing today in the world, then blockchain is for you because this is the anecdote.
It sure is. There's
Yeah.
things I can do to participate, and I can be anywhere in the world and I still can participate. And it's just that there's something beautiful about the ability to be free,
Yeah.
right? And it's like oftentimes the previous system, before we were all connected,
Mhm.
we just didn't have as much opportunity. It was just so concentrated in few areas within the country, but
Right.
now completely opened up to the entire world. I've hung out with folks celebrating launches in Nigeria, and I
Mhm.
got to watch these folks contribute to the local community and give education to children that just didn't have education before because they're
Yep.
able to bring funds into a community that was otherwise stricken by poverty and couldn't
Yep.
even afford to put seats into their school. So now they can. I just find it really interesting that we're literally supporting the next generation of
Right.
this connected world that could go interstellar.
It's so interesting what you mentioned because I watched this speech about a Bitcoinized Africa. And by the way, we have people in Nigeria who reached out and want to start a league for
Mm.
blockchain billiards. So they might be one of our first global leagues. That would be awesome. But I think that because the blockchain is trustless, because you don't need these middlemen and these intermediaries anymore and potential for bad actors, and it's being automated and it's through the computer. For that component, that's really exciting.
It's super exciting. Yeah, it's interesting because we've done this before, like countless times. And you look at everything from the invention of the will to the hammer, it's like we constantly create new tooling and the ebbs and flows of innovation still as prevalent as ever. But what I find is about the folks that opt in, and this is just the most amazing thing to me. It's not even just the reach like Nigeria. How awesome is that? That you get to work and be impactful with your coworkers in Nigeria.
Right.
Wow, which is unreal. But the value, our time, and our
Yeah.
time is the most special part of life.
Yeah.
And somehow we say our time in this one location is worth more than this time in this other location.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the real impact of having a globally connected world is that we're removing those and starting to create fair access for
Right.
everybody. If they have a skill and merit, you should be treated fairly no matter your geolocation.
Right. That's exactly it's from that perspective. It's from what I mentioned before, like the trustless perspective with a Bitcoinized Africa. It's giving people access to a new digital currency and ability to transact and to innovate and to be entrepreneurs. And these are people, billions of people who don't have access to the traditional system because they don't have the KYC, the know your client requirements that are necessary for a lot of the banking systems. So because we have this trustless blockchain technology, it allows for that ability for people to be able to transact without needing to sign up for an account with all the KYC requirements. That's super important because now I'm seeing it happen in South Africa and throughout Africa, different case studies where this is taking off.
I know the KYC AML is really tricky because every governing body is going to have different ways to look at how you facilitate the KYC AML processes.
Mhm.
But not everything requires this because maybe what you're transferring is not of value at all. It's just a utility to create a trigger point to turn on something like the lights in your house, right?
Yeah.
So if I
Yeah.
have IoT and I do a transaction, let's say Bitcoin. And
Mhm.
I just add some data there that then my service goes, oh, Brandy did a transaction, time to turn on the light.
Mhm.
Like, why is that a taxable event?
Yeah.
And on my light,
Yeah.
right? And
Right.
I think that's where policymakers, at least when I talk to policymakers, I focus on the utility side. It's like, just put yourself in the shoes of the user doing a transaction. And
Right.
then tell me, at what point are we crippling innovation? Because
Right.
in my case, where I'm just trying to turn on the light, if I get blocked because all of a sudden it flagged and there's no maybe my profile for that specific wallet, and I can have thousands of wallets. It's maybe there's an issue and then it stops my light from turning on. And then when I
Right.
think about the future of this connected world, that's a real problem. Like, how many times do we need to ask permission to open our door from a third party, or can we go ahead and do it directly without fear of an intermediary claiming that
Yeah.
an event occurred? It needs to be audited. Like,
Yeah.
I should audit my own access control to my own home and I should own my own lights,
Mhm.
access control for them turning on and off.
Right.
It's challenging because I understand I work with governments. I took, I've done government contracts. I certainly value our system and our
Yeah.
government. It's just they're slow. And I think a lot of times they're slow on understanding how they're holding back innovation. And in Hawaii, that was one of them, right? The money transmitter law. Not every project is trying to transmit money. And here
Right.
they go, putting a blanket, you got to have this money transmission. Well, that hurt a lot of projects and also restricted access to
Mhm.
participation in Hawaii, where now folks are missing out. I can't remember when that money transmitter law came into effect, but
Yeah.
it prevented Coinbase from being here,
Right.
people from acquiring on Coinbase. And then I know that Bitcoin goes up and it's volatile, it's up and down in
Yeah.
price, but it seems like the citizens of Hawaii missed out. And that was a fault of the regulatory body.
Yeah. They missed out when it was 15,000 or whatever just a year and a half ago. It can definitely improve enhanced transparency and security and streamline processes, and especially helping with the bureaucratic, reduce bureaucracy. There's so much potential for blockchain in Hawaii.
You remember earlier I said that you can have 1,000 wallets, right? It's so easy. I
Yeah.
can create a wallet in a second. Now it has
Mhm.
a new identity,
Yep.
but it has zero respect. It has a zero score. Like it was FICA, like a credit score, it would
Yeah.
be a zero. But the
Right.
more I use the wallet, the more I transact, the more I involve and gain trustful resources like KYC, AML with that specific wallet address. And then no longer do I have a zero credit profile. My
Right.
identity on the blockchain now has a reputation of doing good business. It has
Right.
AML, it has KYC. I've done
Yep.
business with good vendors. That's a new reputation system.
I
Sure,
love it.
you can go ahead and start up a new wallet address and start all over, but you can't go back in time. And this is the power of mutability. You cannot go
Yep.
change those records and gain
Right.
credit you didn't deserve.
Yep.
It- It's fascinating because it's like it really solves a lot of the problems that the governments have. And when I see things like politics, oh my goodness, I don't want to get into a talk of politics, but there's this thing going on about should we tax tips? And
Mhm.
I thought about that. I was like, how interesting is that? Is that a way to actually attack the so-called underground economy so we can make it more acceptable to do digital
Mhm.
tips so that way people aren't afraid to have a digital identity and accept these payments?
Right.
I'm just like,
Yeah.
social engineering. There's emotional intelligence required to make these decisions.
I like your approach and how you focus on how you approach policymakers from the utility perspective. I think that's really smart. I don't know if my selling points would reach that audience. I think what I'm trying to advocate for is more for your average person. It really is very power to the people. And so whereas I think your approach is spot on for our decision makers, our policymakers, and it might scare them less than what I'm than what I'm talking about.
These people, we need people and we
Mhm.
need a governing body
Yeah.
because we have chaos. So you have to have a government. And how does the government work? It takes good people to make good government.
Yeah.
And so we have to come together and we're the ones who get to have
Right.
conversations with policy leaders to make those changes, to amend our constitution, to go ahead and move the advancement of technology and our overall quality of life forward.
Yeah. Right.
And I value our constitution. I value the history. And I think a lot of people get it wrong. Everybody says, no, we have the constitution. We shouldn't amend these. When the constitution was written, there wasn't many roads.
Yeah.
Technology sure has changed a lot. I think that it was very good to have amendments and
Yeah.
adding that in. So now we get to take these lessons learned of history, all the changes, because then they couldn't, no line of sight when the constitution was made,
Yeah.
no line of sight
Yeah.
about where technology is going. So
Yeah.
today you're actually working to helping contribute in the future of what governance should be. And that's the power of it. Focusing on the people, set up a system that does some good for the people to
Right.
prove use case from a utility standpoint and a value exchange. And I think policymakers far and wide are going to see projects like yours and they're going to go, maybe I got it wrong. Maybe we need to think a little differently. And
Cool.
I can't wait. Blockchain Summit's coming. You mentioned earlier, hope we get to talk to some policymakers. I love talking with the folks working in the government.
I'm looking forward to talking story with policymakers as well.
Okay,
And,
we'll keep it
if
going.
there's anything that's a universal constant, it's change. And so I'm a very big fan of change. I think it's inevitable and we have to adapt. And this is hopefully the change we want to see.
Can you please share with the viewers watching right now, how do they find out more about blockchain billiards, more about you?
We do have a website. So it's blockchainbilliards.io. There is information. We actually do have a white paper. And so the white paper is very league centric right now because we are still in this sort of early development. We have not developed the game. So we're at the early stage. So we do have very basic information about game mechanics and in-game reward system. But ultimately, we have our league operating agreement and bylaws. If you want to see how the DAO LLC is formed, we have our mission, we have our overview, we have information about the team. And over time, as we develop, we are going to have an educational hub because we want to onboard people and we want to introduce them to a lot of these terms like NFTs, DAOs, smart contracts, right? People are like, what the heck is that? So we want to make that user friendly. We want to have, when we have members start joining, there's going to be a mobile and desktop application, and then they can link up a wallet. We'll have instructions on how to do that, make it really simple. And then when they want to enter the DAO, it's going to be a simple process. It's going to be like any online voting poll. So we're going to make it simple and straightforward for people.
I love it. It sure
Mhm.
is inspiring to see that you took that evolution of all your hard work and you're paying it forward essentially. When you're looking at decentralization, it's really paying it forward because all those lessons learned, you're giving it to your user base as you're developing your services.
Yeah. It's 100% for our users, whether it's the league members or our game players. We're creating a model that is for them and that is going to benefit them. I think that we have a certain level of maybe people feel a little bit complacent and we don't know how to affect change and they want to make change, but they don't know how to. And so hopefully this will help them.
Well, thank you, Linda, for helping participate and build a better future for all of us.